Hello, and welcome to another episode of Tales from the Pennybloods. When a British property owner has trouble selling his haunted house, what else can he do but call on a team of ghost hunters to help uncover the mystery? Based on Alan Upward's 1905 story, The Green House, this show also features a cameo appearance by ghost detective Thomas Carnacki, famous from a series of stories by William Hope Hodgson. Jonathan Brandt does the voices of Mortimer and Carnacki. Clive Marlowe plays Hargreaves. Kate Feeney plays Mrs. Sargent, and Julia Warren plays Miss Sargent. And listen carefully for the latest addition to our cast, the Ghost Hunter's Cat. This episode was written, directed, and engineered by Julia Warren, and executive produced by Arnold Anthony Schmidt.
The place was London, the year 1905, and I was on my way as usual to the office shared with my partner Mortimer. It was our habit to have morning tea brought into our office, regular as clockwork, and today was no exception, although I was a little late after a slight contretemps with my housekeeper.
Hargreaves!
Mortimer!
Tea?
I thank you.
I would have a toast, only I see you have breakfasted already.
Ah, you allude to the remains of scrambled egg on my waistcoat.
Actually, it was the jam on your cravat.
It's Mrs. T's method of serving.
What does she do? Fling it at you from the doorway? Are you contagious, man?
Not quite that eccentric as yet, although there are times.
Never mind all that now. I have something here of possible interest to you.
Not another haunted house they can't sell?
Greenhouse, to be precise. I know you're interested in these matters, so I took the liberty of promising the current owner, Mr. Gilstrap, that I would put you in contact with him to see what can be done as things stand.
It is my fate, owing to previous experience, to be handed all those properties which others cannot or will not inhabit for detailed investigation as to their haunted status. What my partner Mortimer now described fell into that category. We are estate agents, he and I. Houses are our business, buying, selling, occasionally renting out. I freely confess to an interest in those buildings, often empty, sometimes derelict, where a legend lingers on of the otherworldly, if only to disprove the legend, thence to sell on said building at a handsome profit.
It is all nonsense, of course, but the people in the neighborhood have got the idea firmly into their heads, and now if any tenants come, they are sure to hear of it directly and get frightened. The result is that he has lost tenant after tenant, and now the reputation of the house is so bad that he cannot sell it.
What sort of a house is it? And what will he take for it?
He says he will take anything. £500 if he can't get more, though the house cost £1,500 to build. You had better see the man yourself.
In order to see the property with a view to purchasing it, I invite you to accompany me to the said property for a more complete inspection. I requested the owner, Mr. Gilstrap, to accompany me to the Green House, which we did by way of train. We arranged to meet at the railway station. I had a slight problem there, as I had no idea what Mr. Gilstrap looked like. Mr. Gilstrap?
Who?
Are you Mr. Gilstrap? No, of course you're not. You're wearing a collar. You can't possibly be him.
Well, great heavens, what station is this? I must get off at once!
Could you please? Oh.
Station master! Station master!
Mind how you go, Governor, or you'll be on that great train in the sky. All aboard!
Another gentleman got on, a severe-looking fellow who nodded at me and took a seat. Gilstrap?
Hargreaves?
I thought for a moment that I had got on the wrong train.
No, you haven't. This is the train to Wallington.
Excellent, excellent. Lucky with the weather, aren't we?
Indeed.
And it looks like we'll have the carriage to ourselves. Capital.
Yes, I had a word with the station master. We shall not be disturbed.
During the journey, I took the opportunity to put some questions about the house to Gilstrap, whose manner was rather reserved. Pipes! They're usually the first thing to go, and when they do, well, they can emit the most disturbing sounds. I remember one place we dealt with. The hot water pipes gave off a most dismal groan, as if someone were dying.
Indeed.
Then another place I visited, the floorboards squealed like an army of mice. I'm sure they had not been replaced since the reign of Queen Anne.
The whole building is in thorough repair. You may rest assured on that point, mister.
My attempts at conversation dried up, and after a journey made longer by silence, we reached Wallington Station and started walking up to the house. Is there any story about the house? Anything to account for its being haunted?
No. What story should there be? It's a modern house, hardly been built 10 years.
And how long has it been your property?
I bought it as soon as it was put up.
And how long has it been haunted?
The house has been talked about for some years now. 4 or 5. I must step in here and get the keys. Wait a moment.
But my curiosity about the greenhouse was so strong that I could not resist the temptation to walk in after him.
I have called for the keys of the greenhouse, if you please.
I haven't been able to find a caretaker yet. They say you must pay them for living in such a house.
Oh, do they indeed? Infernal chick. You see, Mr. Hargreaves, what I have to put up with.
And glaring first at the agent and then at me, guilt-strapped snatched the keys without a further word and hurried out.
Been trying to get someone to live here, free of rent, to improve its reputation.
The greenhouse was a modern red brick one, standing in a road with several others, and certainly not looking at all the kind of place to have a supernatural legend attached to it. As soon as we got inside, I saw that the house was partly furnished. Is there any room particularly connected with the ghostly rumours? After what struck me as a momentary hesitation, he led me upstairs into what was clearly the principal bedroom. Nice view over the garden. Is this where, the ghost walks?
There is no ghost, and it does not walk anywhere. But the people who slept in this room complain.
What do they complain of?
Oh, nothing, except some nonsense or other. They say they do not sleep well, and they dream things. Fancies, you know, fancies.
Well, what sort of fancies? If they dream, they must dream of something. Gilstrap glanced up at the ceiling and swiftly withdrew his eyes with a nervous tremor. I was now firmly persuaded that he himself had been the victim of some spectral horror, though he was anxious to conceal it for fear of frightening me off. We went upstairs. Gilstrap was still preoccupied and withdrawn. I, meanwhile, looked around carefully, making sure to miss no detail that might prove important later.
Perhaps I had better not tell you anything. There is a great deal in the influence of suggestion, so it is said. If I were to tell you what the people who have slept in this room have seen, or dreamed they have seen, that might be enough to make you dream the same. Whereas if a sensible man without any emotions came and slept here, he would most likely never be disturbed.
There is something in that. And what's up there?
Oh, do you want to see the other rooms?
I want to see everything. Unfurnished. Is there something wrong with this room as well?
Well, the servants don't like to sleep in it. It does very well as a box room.
Well, Mr. Gilstrap, the house is clearly in good condition. And here is what I propose. Allow me to lodge there a month, with the option to purchase at the end of the month. Or what do you say to that?
I say no, and here's why. I want to sell it outright, or not at all. If you live in it a month and have no trouble, I shall then be able to ask a reasonable price.
I took the evening train home, and the next morning, back in London, I rushed off to the office after a horrid breakfast.
Well, Hargreaves?
Well, Mortimer,
Coffee, was it, this morning?
how can you tell? I changed my cravat straight after breakfast.
But neglected to change your shirt. However, that was not the original purport of my question. I meant, well, what of greenhouse?
Oh, then, I believe I have struck a bargain. As of this week, I shall take up residence for a month at the place, at the price of £500. If, at the end of that time, I prove it is not haunted, I hope to sell it at a profit.
Indeed, the devil you have. Well, I shall know whether it is a good bargain or not when I hear what you have sold it for.
My next step was to secure some attendance and to send down some furniture for the 2 empty rooms around which the mystery appeared to cling.
These negotiations, of course, required the services of my lady secretary, Miss Alwyn Sargent, who has a rather unusual gift, that of second sight while asleep. Miss Sargent!
Mr. Hargreaves.
I trust you are well this morning?
And I trust it was coffee this morning?
What is it about my morning collations that so fascinates people?
I believe vinegar is excellent for removing the stains.
I shall inform Mrs. T. Now, in the meantime, I have a house in the offing which requires some investigation.
Oh, hauntings? Poltergeist activity? Bats?
I'll put it down as a straight haunting, if it is that. There's a room people can't sleep in, possibly more than one.
Very well. Possible haunting of 1 or more bedrooms.
And knowing of your gift in this area, I would be obliged if you could,
I shall, of course, be happy to help investigate.
Naturally, I include your mother in the invitation for the sake of...
Propriety, quite so. I shall inform her forthwith. Reigate 321, please. Mamma? Prepare 2 valises, if you please. We are to take residence at?
The Greenhouse, Wallington.
The Greenhouse, Wallington. I know, Mother. Uncle Fred will simply have to manage until we get back. Thank you, Mother.
Uncle Fred?
He's convinced there's a cavalier haunting his cellar. I promised to look into it.
The commission fee will be as usual, but perhaps a little extra for putting out Uncle Fred.
Oh, fiddlesticks. It will be his butler pilfering the claret again.
engaged a respectable woman to come in by the day, and on the evening agreed upon, we went down together to take possession of the haunted house. Miss Sargent and her mother were installed in the haunted room, and I decided to occupy the attic overhead. We arrived to find a dinner ready prepared, and we sat down to a hearty meal, during which Mrs. Sargent regaled us with some stories of her own.
We stayed nearly a year in that house, and every night there was a tapping at the back door. Cook always said it was old Mr. Hamilton back from the dead, coming in from the stables. It was only later we discovered it was the boot boy from the house across the meadow, come to visit his sweetheart. Still, we did tell each other a great many ghost tales around his tapping at the time.
What would Mr. Carnacki have made of that, I wonder?
Carnacki would, I am certain, have got to the bottom of it in a second. I tried inviting him along this evening, but he was unavailable. Out of town altogether on another of his cases.
I do hope we get to hear the details on his return.
I shall make a dinner, and both you and Mrs. Sargent shall come and hear him regale us with his latest exploits. More gravy, Mrs. Sargent?
Why, thank you.
After a pleasant supper, the two ladies retired at about 11 o'clock. I sat up a little later smoking a cigar, and contrasting the cheerful evening I had just passed with the lonely ones I was accustomed to in my West End chambers. Towards 12, I went upstairs intending to go to bed. But whether it was the sensation of being in a strange house under such circumstances, or a secret apprehension of which I was hardly conscious, no sooner did I find myself in the room I had chosen, than I was seized with an overmastering reluctance to get into the bed. I took off my coat merely, rolled myself well up in the blankets, and tried to go to sleep. I am an old traveller and have never experienced any difficulty in sleeping in my clothes in trains, or under similar circumstances. But on this occasion the attempt was hopeless. I lay on the bed literally shivering, and not from the cold. I neither saw nor heard anything. I was not alarmed in the ordinary sense, and yet, if I had known there was a murderer and lurking in the room ready to spring on me and stab me the moment I closed my eyes, I could not have felt more wretchedly afraid. When I heard the frightful scream, I rushed downstairs to be met by Mrs. Sargent at the door to their room. What is it, Mrs. Sargent?
It is Alwyn. She is seeing something horrible in her sleep, and I can't wake her.
Without stopping to consider the questions of etiquette, I dashed into the room. The gas lamp had been turned full on, and by its light, I saw the girl lying stretched on a couch at the foot of the bed, her features frozen into the expression of one who looks upon some horrid sight, while from her parted lips there issued appalling sounds which wounded like the stabs of a knife.
Dripping on me! Dripping on me!
Water! Fetch me water!
Here. Why is she looking up there?
Help me to carry out a... Quick! Here, over here, onto this bed.
She's peaceful as a babe now.
I take it I may leave her in your care now? Allow me to bring more blankets. After such a night, it is understandable that I slept nervously. Imagine my surprise on entering the breakfast in the morning to find Miss Sargent completely herself.
Good morning.
Miss Sargent,
Do you think there might be any jam?
I am sure I don't know how you can be thinking of jam after such a night as we just passed.
Why? What happened?
have you no recollection, Miss Sargent?
Indeed, I do not.
How could you not? Such fearful groans and nightmares as I never heard, not since great-aunt Colleen held that séance and Ivy the maid ran off with the silver.
Oh, Miss Sargent, it is indeed a blessing you cannot recall. And as your mother intends to depart this very day...
The midday train straight back home, my dear.
Might I suggest we make short work of the toast and eggs and this excellent tea?
But I am perfectly happy to stay another night. It will probably take that amount of time to properly discover.
When
My
really...
dear Miss Sargent.
Sausages! Sausages? Well, really.
You spoke, during your trance, of blood. Blood dripping from the ceiling onto you.
I see. Might I have the butter, please?
Yes, sir, of course. More toast?
And what else happened?
You were gazing up at the ceiling most intently, although you were still in your trance.
Indeed.
Sausages?
Yes, please.
Mrs. Sargent, sausages?
I suppose so.
It seems to me quite certain that what I saw, as you have described it, represents something that actually happened in this house. Dreadful as it sounds, I firmly believe that somebody has been murdered in that attic in which you slept, and that his blood did drip through the ceiling of the room below.
Murder? Oh, I feel quite faint.
Have some more tea, Mamma.
No, thank you, my dear. I wish to leave this terrible house in its curse immediately.
Will this be all?
Oh, yes, I believe so. Allow me...
I should hope so. Nearly did my back in.
Here, for your trouble.
Oh, well, thank you very much, sir. Wish you and your ladyships a pleasant journey.
All aboard there! Hurry up with those doors!
Where is my hat box?
Oh, on top of the hamper, Mamma. Let me just shift my trunk a little more to the left.
And my night bag?
Between the Gladstone bag and the carpet bag. I just put it there myself. Do you need it now?
No. I just wanted to be sure we had it.
Oh, let me help you with that. Oh, I am awfully sorry.
Oh, it's quite all right. I can manage.
Now, where did I put my book?
In the tapestry bag. I'll get it for you.
Oh, do you think for a couple of nights away it was necessary to bring quite so much?
It's Mamma. I said 2 valises, but she insisted on bringing her own tea set.
And the kitchen sink, it would appear. Is this a folding cake stand?
And where are our tickets?
All aboard! As soon as Miss Sargent and her mother had left, I went straight to a builder's in the neighbourhood. Reluctant as I was for many reasons to entertain Miss Sargent's suggestion, I dared not neglect it altogether. I determined at all events to do whatever could be done to solve the mystery. Mr. Dale?
Aye, that's me.
Jack Hargreaves, of Mortimer and Hargreaves, house agents. I am the new owner of Green House, and I have a request, one that may sound rather eccentric. I wish to engage you and your men to examine some floorboards between 2 rooms. 2 rooms that are reputed to be haunted. No doubt you have heard tell of the house reputation.
I knew it. I knew there was something the matter with that house. It ain't likely that tenant after tenant would come away scared without something was wrong. Why, do you know, sir, in the last 5 years since Mr. Giltstrap gave it up, I've whitewashed one ceiling in that house 9 times.
9 times, eh? Mould, was it?
Not that I could ever see, and so I told them. But they never said it was mould, mind.
So Mr. Giltstrap once lived in it himself, did he?
Seeing that I built it for him, I can say that he did.
And why did he leave it?
I couldn't say, I'm sure. No more than I could for all those others who came to stay after him. Look here, Mr. Hargreaves. Mr. Giltstrap was a good customer of mine. He always paid me regular, and I ain't got nothing to say against him. But I'm curious about the house, it being one of mine, so I will accompany you with my workmen. Give me a few minutes.
Within minutes, I and Mr. Dale, along with several of his sturdy workers, were at the greenhouse. I led the way directly to the room where Miss Sargent had experienced her vision.
Aye, this is the room I remember right enough.
It is, and that part towards the back wall is the area of my particular interest.
Very well, sir. Right, lads, get measuring.
The blood, dripping, dripping, dripping.
And this is where you were sleeping, sir?
That is correct, yes. The men began work, pulling up the floorboards. They had barely begun before some of them began to cry out.
It's lime!
It's lime!
It's lime!
What's that?
They're saying it's lime.
It may be. So it is. Oh, but look here, sir. There's no way that lime could have been left there when the house was completed. I'd stake my life on it. That lime has been put there for no good. If you want some things hidden away and destroyed, there's nothing better than what lime is when it's fresh. It burns as well as fire and makes no smoke.
The blood, dripping, dripping.
You mean a dead body?
I don't say nothing about that. It ain't for me to say what that lime's been used for. All I say is, it wasn't me that left it there, nor yet my men.
Look here, sir.
What is it?
Good heavens. Look at the beam there.
It's stained through and through. It's blood.
What have you got there?
Why, it's metal and small and sharp.
The stiletto. Nothing more was found. I gave the builder an order to entirely renew the flooring between the 2 haunted rooms, and from the time that was done, there has never again been the slightest complaint from any occupier of the property. I let the greenhouse almost immediately to a respectable tenant, a retired schoolmaster who changed its name, and before the year was out, I was able to dispose of it to a purchaser at the price of £1,250, a sum which enabled me to compensate Miss Sargent for her trying experience. The most extraordinary part of the story remains to be told.
Mr. Hargreaves,
Miss Sargent.
you are returned already. Now that is capital, as you had a visitor in your absence whom you would not want to miss. And there is time if you call now.
A visitor, eh?
Indeed, Mr. Carnacki, no less.
Why, the very man I was thinking of. This is news indeed. What did he say?
That is what I've been trying to tell you. He said to call him at his club.
Capital. I shall ask him to dinner, and if you are available, Miss Sargent, your company would be most welcome.
I thank you, Mr. Hargreaves. I should be delighted, but I may be a trifle behind in time.
A prior engagement? Nothing untoward, I hope.
Uncle Fred's cavalier. I am still of the mind that it's the butler, but all should be over in a matter of an hour or so.
An hour? Oh, Miss Sargent, I should be delighted to see a cavalier.
I fear you will be disappointed.
If it is indeed the butler, then all is well. I confess to a feeling of curiosity, however. What if...
What if, indeed?
I called on Carnacki and invited him to dine with me. I had barely mentioned Miss Sargent when he said, "Aha, her uncle's phantom cavalier. I fancy it will be an interesting case," which somewhat piqued me, as she must have already told him about it before telling me.
I am at your complete disposal. Shall we attend Miss Sargent first and then eat together?
Well, she seemed to think it of no real significance.
If we order a cab, we could be there and back in a matter of minutes. Come, I see you are as curious as I am in the matter.
I confess the opportunity of seeing a cavalier is most intriguing.
Miss Alwyn, your uncle is expecting you in the library.
Uncle, I am here. Hello, Tibby. I see. I'll just start without you.
There. Let's sit here. Tibby, what about this place? No, don't move. That's fine. Good. I wonder what color.
As we bowled along in the cab, I narrated my experiences at the greenhouse and those of Miss Sargent. Carnacki, I could tell, was deeply interested.
And nobody knows who or what may have been buried in the lime, or who used the stiletto.
Nothing, apparently. Of course, it's only just been discovered. Who knows how long ago it, or indeed what, happened.
And you are certain the house has now been cleared of all possible phantoms?
I gave instructions for the floor to be renewed completely.
When?
Just before returning to town. Barely 6 hours ago.
Can you delay that?
Well, yes, I could. Do you think...
Something tells me there is more to be discovered. I have a curiosity to see the place for myself.
I only just heard you arrived.
Hush, Aunt. I am communicating.
What can I do to help?
You may sit quietly at the table and hold my hands.
I can tempt you to accompany me to the greenhouse then?
Tempt? Wild horses wouldn't stop me. I will have a few things to pack, so may I suggest tomorrow morning? The 11:15 train?
How much do you need to pack?
A few small items which might prove helpful.
As long as it's not a whole tea set.
A tea set?
Nothing. Oh, we are here, I believe.
An excellent sack. My God, the Madeira is better though.
Mr. Hart.
Please whisper.
Mr. Hargreaves and Mr. Carnacki, ma'am.
Good evening, gentlemen. Pray be seated. She is already in a trance.
Excellent. Let us see if she can take us to the gentleman in question. Good evening, sire. What is thy name, pray?
Good evening to thee. I am Sir Roger Haville. Be seated, sirrah, and tray of this wine.
Show us whence thou drawest it.
What are you doing?
This way.
We will need a lantern and a torch.
Yes, sir.
I thank you. Lead on, Sarah.
Oh, Tibby, nearly fell over you. Here, let me carry you. Heavens, what is it?
Do you hear it too?
Is it? Is it?
You know me, Hargreaves, how I dislike leaping to conclusions. But it is indeed curious. Let us throw a little more light on the matter.
Excellent, yeah, 1667. Not quite as good as the 1670.
Who is Sir Roger Haville?
He's cavalier. I thought you knew that.
I mean, is he related? I'm confused.
No doubt he's related to someone.
But why is he talking through Miss Sargent? And why is he so drunk? I mean, I know they went in for tippling, but this is more than...
Shh. Hush. She's moving again.
Oh, it's so blessed dark in here.
Yes. Let me lift the lantern a little.
As Carnacki raised the lantern, I caught sight of a part of Miss Sargent's dress as she moved forward, deeper into the cellar, and then we both saw it.
Oh, good heavens!
Ahead of us, barely distinguishable by that low, flickering light, stood the outline of a man. A man in a large-brimmed hat with feathers, with a great lace collar, and one hand raised up as he held a bottle to his lips. It's the drunken cavalier.
A very drunken cavalier.
Never in all my life did I expect to see... As we stood watching in a combination of awe, fascination, and mild terror, the phantom cavalier finished drinking, deposed the now empty bottle very carefully upon the ground, and wandered off, wiping his mouth.
A very solid bottle.
It's a Bordeaux.
Such a modern sense of taste.
Where is he gone?
Vanished.
Bordeaux, 1886.
Very modern test indeed.
Where is she going now? Oh, gentlemen, do please try to restrain her. I fear she will walk into a wall and hurt herself. Oh, Tibbs.
I will accompany her, never fear. Let me have the other lantern, thank you. I say, there's a door here, I think.
Is there a key?
Not that I know of, sir. There shouldn't be a door there at all, to my knowledge.
Turn left, turn right, and push and pull.
Ah, she means the handle, I do believe. So it is.
Great heavens! Where is this? What is...
A separate entrance to the back garden. And if I'm not mistaken, another way to the servants' quarters.
Straight ahead and up the stairs. Come, gentlemen, or we shall be too late.
Miss Sargent, you are conscious?
And have been for some time. Come, quickly, this way.
We began to trot, and from trotting began to run, faster and faster, until we almost fell upon the phantom as he was in the process of removing his boots. It was, in fact, the footman. Thoroughly imbued with the goodwill and cheer bestowed by an excellent red, he asked us to give him a hand with removing the second of his boots. The secret entrance, it transpired, he had discovered some time previously, after following a gentleman in feathered hat and boots, like he'd been to a costume ball, who had then mysteriously disappeared. We suppose he had imagined the cavalier, or made up the account to sustain the legend of Sir John Haville. But the fellow was adamant, even in his state of inebriation. However, as we were returning to the main house by the moonlight...
I say, do you see that?
Well, I never... It's not the footman again, is it? It was, for but a moment, that we both saw a figure staggering about at the secret entrance to the cellar, in broad-brimmed hat with feathers, and cloak and boots. Even at a distance we could hear, ever so faintly, the sound of slurping, then humming and drunken singing. It faded away even as we looked. Mr. Tibbs, meanwhile, thought it good sport to run up to the phantom, purring and meowing as if greeting an old friend. We found the animal pawing at the wall and entrance, still meowing. Of the phantom cavalier there was now no trace. Later on, Miss Sargent's uncle had some work done in that part, and another older wine cellar was discovered, along with a pair of ancient boots and a half-empty bottle of 17th century Madeira. All in all, the evening was most entertaining. Miss Sargent had solved the mystery, and we left the aunt and butler giving the footman a stiff talking to. Miss Sargent's uncle still snoring in a corner. We proceeded meanwhile to dinner at my place.
So we have floorboards stuffed with lime that was not there by Mr. Dale's admission when he completed the house.
And a stiletto.
And the stiletto. Add to this the fact that the ceiling has been whitewashed 9 times since the original owner left it.
Yes, apparently the occupants believed this would help reduce their nightmares and visions, as Mr. Dale put it.
Clearly it did not. Did Mr. Dale specify what sort of visions were involved?
I believe similar to Miss Sargent's, of blood dripping from that part of the ceiling. He could never see anything, but as long as they paid...
Of course, shrewd fellow.
You are returning tomorrow, I understand.
Yes, the morning train. Will you be able to accompany us?
Alas, I cannot, but I believe you will be able to discover the truth without my help.
About those floorboards. Did the workmen clear away all the lime?
Oh, they may have done so by now. Do you hope to find something else there?
It is, of course, too soon to tell, but well, let us see.
Carnacki spent a good while in the room, drawing out pentacles and placing small objects here and there. At last he pronounced us ready and stepped inside the pentacle, beckoning to me to follow suit. He had his camera with him, ready to hand. We waited while he sprinkled something from a small flask, and then, as the light shifted from dusk to twilight, we heard and saw. A man, a handsome one, entered the room with a satchel. Having taken his shoes off, he stretched out on the bed and took out a locket, which he kissed and hid in his pocket. Soon he slept. The figure remained nearly as solid as a phantom could do, and I came close to dozing off with the tedium of watching it sleep.
Hargreaves, wake up!
What?
Look!
The door opened again, very, very softly. We heard rather than saw the movement. The stealthy movement of someone crossing the floor in tiptoe, so as not to awaken the sleeping man. Then we both saw it. The raised hand holding the knife. The poor unsuspecting victim, however guilty in the flesh, yet an innocent undeserving of violence, asleep on his back, unconscious. The knife swooping down, the horrid jump of the body as it responded, then the lifeless form as it was dragged from the bed and across the floor. Still we could not see who the assailant was. Carnacki raised his camera and fired off the flashlight, just as the strong vision faded away, leaving us by the light of a flickering candle. I tugged at Carnacki's sleeve. Let us be gone.
It needs light for what we must do.
And what is that?
Why, to search the floorboards again.
And once it was daylight, Search we did. It was close on noon when we discovered, caught in a crack between rafters where it had rolled away years before, a locket.
Tightly shut. Let's see. Give me that. There we are. Well, what a beauty, eh?
Indeed. They would have made a fine couple. How tragic.
Let us see if there are any names here. Aha! The lady is Emma, and his is Theodore. We have names.
We returned the same night, I in some slight shock. That locket, found so near where the stiletto had been discovered previously, might well hold some clue. A day or so later, and I was in Carnacki's darkroom, watching as negatives slowly revealed themselves in the snapshots he had taken at the house. What we had seen so clearly was a mass of blurry shadows at first, then magically came into focus.
And now, if we take a look at this one...
Oh, the smell! Almost overpowering.
It is a little strong when you're not used to it. Here, take this towel and wrap it around your face.
Oh, what is that odour?
Lavender and eucalyptus. By the way, I put in few inquiries and may be on the track of at least one of our fair lovers.
Oh, not sure if it isn't worse than the spirits. You were saying?
Our Theodore was an actor, once quite popular in the boards, then took less and less to the stage and became a traveller, until he travelled quite off the map.
I see. I think. So he must have stopped by the greenhouse and asked for lodging.
Was the greenhouse at any time an inn, perhaps?
Not that I know of. I mean, I could make more detailed inquiries, but I'm fairly certain it would have been mentioned.
If he was not a lodger, then he must have been a guest.
An acquaintance? Or a relative?
If only we had some notion of when he might have visited.
Aha! Now there we may have a stroke of luck. These prints over here, for example, are enlargements of the photographs in the locket. We may still want a magnifying glass, but I'll wager there's a year on at least one of them. But before we look at them, let us see what the camera caught the other night.
With that, Carnacki fished around in one of the trays. I followed him over to see the magic of the darkroom in action. We watched the soft charcoal textures of the image take shape underwater. And I could not refrain from gasping at the phantom sleeper on his bed, materializing before our eyes. Captured for eternity, the translucent yet clearly defined traits of his face and form now sit framed in Carnacki's study. On occasion it is brought out for lectures at the Royal Psychic Society as one of the best examples of supernatural photography. But I digress. We left the darkroom for the fresh light of day with the two enlarged prints. Carnacki had a generous collection of magnifiers of different sizes, and selecting one of the largest there, he placed the images behind the lens. We took it in turns to look, and quickly came to the conclusion that the two lovers had exchanged their vows barely 5 years ago. We were rather quiet after making this discovery, each wrapped in thought. We compared notes.
From your account, the house has changed hands several times.
Oh, regular as clockwork, almost. At least 9, if Mr. Dale is anything to go by.
And 5 years ago?
At this, Carnacki drew out his cigarette case, lit a cheroot, and puffed at it pensively, as he does when a case has reached a peculiar turn. At last he said,
You know, a trip to Somerset House might be called for.
Somerset House? What now?
You're right. They might be closed before we get there. Ah, the wonders of the telephone.
Then Carnacki put through a call and made a few inquiries. He is not unknown to detectives on the force who trust in his abilities. I left him to it, not choosing to be involved by name. Time passed, and a few weeks later I went into the office as usual.
Morning, Hargreaves.
Morning, Mortimer.
Egg again, was it?
What? Oh, drat.
You remember the business of that house in Wellington?
Indeed I do, hardly likely to forget. What of it?
It seems that the stiletto found there has led the local constabulary to unearth a crime which had long gone unsuspected.
You don't say?
No, I don't say. It's the newspaper that says it. Look here. Murder most foul. Confession extorted. And all the rest of it. Seems some poor fellow lying asleep in the attic, that room you occupied, was done to death as he slept.
Great heaven!
That's not all. The blood soaked through the ceiling into the room below, which was that of his murderer. Read it here.
The murderer was found by means of a locket discovered near the stiletto. It seems a woman was in the case, and a confession made by the former owner of the residence, once husband of the woman concerned, by the name of... Good Lord! Guiltstrap!
The blood. The blood. The blood. Dripping. Dripping.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Tales from the Pennybloods, based on Alan Upward's 1905 story, The Green House. Jonathan Brandt does the voices of Mortimer and Carnacki. Clive Marlowe plays Hargreaves. Kate Feeney portrays Mrs. Sargent, and Julia Warren plays Miss Sargent. This episode was written, directed, and engineered by Julia Warren, and executive produced by Arnold Anthony Schmidt. If you liked our show, please visit our website at www.talesfromthepennybloods.org and follow us on Instagram, Mastodon, and Twitter. You can listen to our other episodes on Spotify and YouTube. And please, spread the word among your colleagues, friends, and family.